I look at a lot of people who finished the runs that they had on TV and then just kind of fall to the idea of like, well, I need to go on to the next thing. And it sucks because like, you kind of just get chewed up and spit out. Like when they're done with you, you're done, you know, and you got to hope for the next gig. You kind of always assume you'll keep working. And now I think that I have that realization of like, oh, I won't, you know, it's like you're always hoping for the next job.
This is Andro Mamo. Thank you for listening and watching another episode of One on One. This is episode 10. It's a big one. So genuinely to every single person that has sat here and watched an interview thus far, I just want to say thank you so much because it's solely possible through you guys. So thank you. This episode is super special. I grew up watching my next guest as a kid. I would watch him on TV, and the fact that he's gonna be here sitting right next to me is one of the most full circle moments for me. On episode 10, we are pulling out all the stops, as today I am joined by actor and podcast host of the Sit and Chat podcast. My guest today is Mr. Bradley Stephen Perry.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
Yeah, you said the Sit and Chat. I appreciate that.
No, of course. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Means the world.
Yeah, it was a nice, easy drive. We live pretty close to each other.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. Welcome to my house.
Yeah, this actually is a great little setup you have.
Thank you. It means the world. I mean, coming from you, I see your podcast and everything that you're doing. It means the world.
Thank you, man. Yeah, our podcast is at a studio in West Hollywood. I'd much rather drive here than to West Hollywood.
Hey, you know, we can talk about that after. We can pull some strings. So thank you for being here. Ultimately, let's break it down. So you have been a major inspiration in my life for a very long time.
Thank you, man.
I watched you as a kid, and I think it's just been really cool to be able to kind of like keep tabs on you and even Jake and just see what you guys are up to these days. And it's just so refreshing to see everything that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, you know, stars and people that, you know, they say they're doing things, but are they actually?
Yeah, it's been cool, man. I've been pretty lucky to have started working at such a young age and then somehow have people care about me through all these years. I'm pretty fortunate. I don't really know why either.
Hey, you're interesting.
Apparently, I don't know why, but I think going to college actually, I was talking about this with Jake the other day. I think it was something that like helped me relate to my fans a little more.
Wow.
Because while they were in college, I was in college. So it was kind of like, you know, when Good Luck Charlie was on, I was 10. The people who were watching it were 10 to 15 years old. So I was in college at the same time they were. And
isn't that crazy though, that thought that like, in a lot of ways, you grew up with a lot of these people and they grew up with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. And I think that that's what kind of works, especially for Jake and I and our podcast is like, I think the idea that when people watch it, they're like, oh, it's just two friends talking and it reminds us of our friends. Like that's our goal, essentially. And I think that it does help that our fans are our age. You know?
No, it's interesting and again, refreshing, but let's get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
You've been acting your whole life, but I'm very curious. How did you get into acting so young?
Oh man. So I started acting when I was 5. I started by doing commercials, growing up in Thousand Oaks. And the first commercial I did was a local car commercial, GMC Thousand Oaks.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't think it ever aired. And I don't know if anybody ever saw it outside of my family. But you know, like I've said it 1,000 times, but that was like my after school sport, you know, going and doing that just felt so natural for me and like the thing that I've always wanted to do. So I started by doing commercials. My mom would take me down to LA and do the whole audition process. And then I started getting pretty good success with it, booked a bunch of commercials, which at the time was like the best work. Now commercials are like so different, but at the time it was like best money, like best gig because you were always working. Now like nobody really does them, but yeah. So after I booked a bunch of those, then started doing a little more theatrical stuff, auditioning for guest spots, booked a few of those. And then I was pretty fortunate, man. I booked Good Luck Charlie when I was 9 and we started filming when I was 10 and then I just kept working from there.
Was acting always something that like came easy to you?
I think definitely comedy. And I think just the idea of wanting to entertain people in general has always been like, that's always been the thing I just wanted to do. whatever facet it was. I think that's why I enjoyed the podcast or even doing like YouTube stuff. Just the idea that I know that I'm entertaining somebody to some degrees.
Do you remember the first time that like you entertained somebody and like realizing that they enjoyed it?
Yeah. I mean, I've always tried to make my family laugh.
Me too.
That's always the thing that I want to do. And if I can make them laugh, the people who know me the most, like, then I did okay, you know? And so my family still does dinner every Sunday night. Nice. We all live around each other. So we all do dinner, and that's like my doing stand up, you know. I'm like, I'm just working on all my new material. Yeah, dude, I'm just running bits on my family the whole time. And it's usually like a bunch of eye rolls and head scratches on inappropriate jokes, but you still got to try some new stuff.
You really do, especially at the dinner table.
Exactly. Now the problem is I have my nieces and nephews there's a couple of them are like 3 years old. So I'm like, get told that you got to keep it PG. I can be a little raunchy sometimes. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, well, that's interesting. Would you ever get into like stand-up comedy?
I done stand-up.
Really?
Yeah. We had Michael Blaustein on our podcast. He does a Stiff Socks podcast with Trevor Wallace, and he's a stand-up comedian. He's a really, really funny stand-up comedian. But we had this long conversation back and forth about stand-up, and he was saying how basically like you have to commit to 8 years of sucking before you really start doing well in stand-up, going up on and just bombing on stage. And I'm like, I don't know if I have that in me when it comes to stand-up. Like I love stand-up, I really do. And I'm such a fan of stand-up. Like Netflix is a joke. All that stuff is going on right now in LA. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to a show every single night this week.
No way.
I love stand-up. I was at the Roast of Brady on Sunday. Wow. It is like the best thing to me. And I did it, and I was like, wow, it's such a great feeling. But I'm like, I don't know. It's not like, I think the comfort of being behind a podcast is much easier for me.
Yeah, no, that load is definitely a lot easier. Do you remember the first time that you saw maybe somebody that was really funny that you were just kind of like drawn to and saying, you know what, like, I think I want to try that out?
Yeah. You know what's funny is my favorite stand-up comedian when I was a kid was Dane Cook.
No way.
Yeah, dude. My sister and I, we used to always listen to his CD in the car, like when I was growing up. And that's the king of being raunchy. But I was such a big fan of him. And then just like, I mean, Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers was such a big inspiration to me. But dude, I was so lucky when I was like really little. I worked with some unbelievable people. You know, I did a movie with Robin Williams and you know, just people like that. And it's like, so you work with those people, you're like, this is the peak of comedy. You know? And I'm like just lucky to be around them. I got to do a movie with Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller and all those guys, and it's just like pretty cool to be able to say that. And looking at that, it's unbelievable.
Was there something that you learned from working with all those iconic comedians like Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, that you carry with you to this day?
Dude, you know what's so funny? It was, so I did this show for ABC called Schooled, and it was with the comedian Brian Callen, and Brian Callen was just like, so when he was on set, he was always trying to make people laugh. And he would take the dialogue and try to make it as funny as he possibly could. But you have to have so much confidence in that. Like that joke's gonna land, because if it doesn't, you're screwing up everybody's day. You know, everybody's there to work, and it's like if that joke doesn't work, then we're like, all right, well, we got to do it again, and now you're putting us behind. So to have that confidence and to know like this is gonna work, that to me is like something that I really strive for. But working with Sandler was like, it was the most polarizing thing for me when it came to film and television, because there was not a person on that set who didn't just love and adore that man. And he's worked with every person on that set for 20 years, down to crew members. And everybody was happy to be there with him. They were long days, but like, because he was your boss, like it made work so much easier. And I think if you can duplicate that in any way, on any set, then you're going to be successful, because people just want to work with you. You know?
Yeah. Being a good person is really important.
Goes a long way.
It really does go a long way.
It goes a long way.
Yeah. So let's talk about your upbringing. I mean, at 5 years old, you got into acting. Was that something that like early on you go up to your mom like, hey, this is what I want to do? Are your parents super encouraging from the get-go?
No, my mom actually still to this day is like, I wish you would stop acting.
Really?
Yeah. She's just like, it's the worst business, you know, like it's just a bad business. She thinks I'm good at it, I would hope. But, you know, she knows that it's the thing I love to do, but more so it's like the idea of like, it's a very demanding business and you get told no a lot. And it's more from her perspective as like, as a mother, like I can see that it wears on you,
Right.
know? Which it does for sure. But like, my parents mostly just want me to be happy. And I think that they know that it's worked out enough for me that there's like, it's not like I'm pushing myself to do something that's just not going to work.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's worked to a degree. So they're encouraging to have me keep doing it. But, when I was a kid, I don't know. I did that one commercial and it was just kind of like, I think I liked the attention more than anything. I think I liked that I was like the main focus on this set.
Yeah.
And I was making people laugh and everything was kind of about me. So I just kind of kept doing it. And then it turned into just a love for doing it. But
I think it's so fascinating, the fact that like from a very early age, you chased what was something that you were very passionate about.
yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't find that, you know, they don't find that until way later in life. But I think for me, it was just like in any way of playing baseball or football, whatever your sport is, like you grow up doing that. And a lot of people try to do that for forever.
Right.
But I just got lucky that the thing I think I was good at, I found super young. I don't even know, honestly, like if I didn't start doing that at that age, like I don't know if I would have just gone the normal route of middle school to high school to college, like I don't know if I would have ended up in film and television.
Interesting.
You know, like I don't know if that would have been my thing. I think I definitely, like I said, I've always loved entertaining people, but I don't really know if that would have been specifically my thing.
Yeah. And I mean, this industry is full of rejection, truthfully, right? So early on, I mean, when you were faced with certain rejections, right? I mean, you didn't get a role, this commercial didn't air.
Yeah.
Would you notice that it would affect you early on?
Yeah. You know, what I've noticed more so at this point in my life, though, is that I'm so numb to it. It's just all brutal and painful, and you just kind of get over it to the point where you're like, you know, it could be between you and one other person for a really big project, a really big show, movie, whatever it is. And you just kind of assume you're not going to get it,
Right.
Because you've been there before and you don't get it. And you just kind of just keep getting kicked in the balls to where you're just like, I don't want, you know, I don't care anymore. And then so it's like people around you are like, oh my God, that's so amazing. You're up for that role. And you're like,
Yeah.
you know, we'll see. There's no second place.
Do you think that like up until right now that you still kind of like have that mentality?
Yeah, for sure. And I think to work in it, you have to be super cynical and kind of pessimistic. And I think Jake and I experience it a lot with our podcast too, because it's like, you know, we know the numbers that it could do. So when you don't see those numbers, you're like, oh, well, it's not doing as well. But we were driving back. We went and we did a podcast out in Arizona, and we decided to just drive back. And it was the two of us in the car for 7 hours. Which is miserable.
I should have filmed that.
Fuck, dude, it's brutal. And I can't even get into it. But, you know, we were just kind of talking about how realistically, when we look at like the numbers we do on our show, we go, okay, well, you know, Staples Center has 19.5 thousand people. You can fill Staples Center X amount of times. And then I'm like, dude, if you put us in the middle of Staples Center with a sold out crowd, I'd probably crap my pants walking in there to do a live
crazy
podcast.
you say that, because like I think about that too in the same way that you do.
Yeah.
Like I was at a Clipper game the other day, and I'm like, realistically, with the numbers that we're doing, it's like I mean,
you could have a decent audience.
you
here,
could,
you know? Like,
yeah.
that's
And I
insane.
think that's really cool, because I think when you're doing something like this, like obviously, you know, you're not going to find success overnight.
No.
This is more of a journey,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's tough too, because so when I was at the roast of Brady, Nikki Glazer went up and she just crushed.
Killed it.
You watched it? Dude, she crushed. She got a standing ovation. Like, it was unbelievable. And I was telling my dad the other day, I was like, I seriously like got chills watching 16,000 people stand up and be like, what the fuck? Just like, that was just unbelievable, you know? And like, she's even like, oh my God, I just crushed, you know?
Yeah.
And like, to me, that's That's my Super Bowl. That's like watching somebody hit a buzzer beater. Like
No
to be able to
kidding.
go up there and do that comedy and like, because you don't get that reward when you make a funny show. You don't get that reward when you make a movie or even a podcast. Because it's like, if I tell a joke on our podcast and I get a bunch of comments that say that, you know, there's a good joke, I don't really know. You know, I didn't hear anybody laugh. But she just had 16,000 people stand up and be like, oh my God, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Like that is so crazy to me, you know? And like, you don't get that reward often. I mean, stand up you for sure do, but like a lot of those people who work just in film and television, you never get that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, to talk about your time on Good Luck Charlie,
Yeah.
what is something that is overlooked by the public that you guys would be doing on the daily?
Oh man. I mean, you know, for us, I don't think that any of us knew that that show was as popular as it was. Kind of to what I was saying right now is, I mean, you hear the numbers, but you don't ever actually see the people.
Yeah.
We just go in, we make the show, and then we leave. I mean, you get recognized a lot in public, so that was kind of like your, you know, judge of it, but it's still not to the degree, especially living in LA. Anytime I go to a different state, people are way more excited to see me than in LA. Nobody gives a shit about you here, dude. So it's like, you know, I walk around and nobody's ever like, whatever, you're the least famous person in this room. But, you know, you go to another place and you're like, oh, go on, this show does pretty well. You know, and so I think for us, we would hear the numbers that we were doing, but it's a number. You really can't process when you hear, yeah, you had 11 million people watch your show on Sunday night. It's like, okay, that's cool, you know, but you don't know. So we just kind of went about our business and just did the show.
And if I may ask you, I heard that you didn't watch the show until you were, I think, a sophomore in college.
Yeah.
If I may ask you why, was that just something just like to kind of like, you know, to kind of like control the ego, or was it just more about?
it was like we would do the show, and I remember the first season I watched a few episodes with my family. And then at a certain point, you're just kind of doing the show and you see it while it's happening. And like, especially when we were doing live tapings, you know, you'd watch the other scenes that were happening. And so it was like when they would come out, you were already like, you're 10 episodes ahead because you've been filming them. And so you just like, I wasn't sitting down on Sunday night to watch the show, especially because we had to go to work the next morning. So I just didn't ever really think about it. And then I went straight from that show to a different show and I just never really watched it. And then I was, you know, going through fraternity hazing and getting made fun of for being on the show so much. And I came home one night and I was like, I got to see what this thing's about. You know, like what's everybody laughing at? And then I turned it on. It was like 3 a.m. I watched a few episodes. And I was like, show's pretty funny. Like,
It really was
pretty good.
Wait, to talk about that though, I mean, you go from being a child star. I mean, you mentioned millions of TVs. Your face is on that, right? From being this prominent child star to being a college student.
Yeah.
Stark difference.
Yeah, very different.
I mean, what was that experience like for you?
Man, I certainly needed it. And I think it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I look at a lot of people who finished the runs that they had on TV and then just kind of fall to the idea of like, well, I need to go on to the next thing. And it sucks because like, you know, you kind of just get chewed up and spit out. Like when they're done with you, you're done, you know, and you got to hope for the next gig. You kind of always assume you'll keep working. And now I think that I have that realization of like, oh, I won't, you know, it's like you're always hoping for the next job. And I think for me to go to college, I started Good Luck Charlie at 9, 10 years old, didn't go to middle school, didn't go to high school. And it was just kind of like, you know, I need to do something real and do something for me and kind of understand life a little more. And I think it was a cool choice for me. And it was, you know, I didn't go very far away. I went to USC. So it was 45 minutes from my parents' house. But, you know, it was still like a big culture shock for me. But I think that like the first few weeks there were really tough just because people were like, why are you here? You know? And
are you that kid?
Yeah, it was a lot of that. And then eventually you're like passing them on the way to class every day and they're just like, I don't care anymore, you know? And then you just kind of fall in line with them. And I think that was like my goal was to just make sure I embraced it at the start till eventually people were just like, oh, it's just a normal thing.
Obviously you had a great childhood.
Yeah.
But if you can go back, would you, want a normal childhood?
No, I had an awesome childhood. I was so happy with everything I got to do. There's not many things I feel like I missed out on. I always made the joke of like, I wanted to go to high school so bad when I was in high school. Like I saw like my friends from home going to high school, and now I'm like, who the hell wants to go to high school? What a terrible.
It wasn't. I
got to work on television. Like, who gives a shit? High school sounds terrible. You know, I was like listening to people complain about it, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I was there. And then I'm like, why would I want to have done that? That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
You know, I'm perfectly happy with the way my life turned out.
Yeah. I'm curious, how did your dreams evolve from the dreams that you had at the start of your career to the dreams that you have right now?
Dude, honestly, I don't even know. That's a cool question, because I don't even know if I don't know if I had dreams of, I think I was just kind of living everything out. I didn't really think about it. It was just kind of my life. It wasn't like I achieved something that I was hoping for. I started at such a young age, and then everything kind of just kept unfolding, and it was the thing I loved to do. So I was lucky. I think as I've grown older and started to understand myself a little more and understand the things that I love in life, like I said, I mean, entertaining people in any way I can or making people laugh is just like, it's just my favorite thing to do. You know, I think it's the most gratifying thing. So, you know, I think as far as dreams go, just continuing to work in film and television and comedy and in any aspect, even continuing the podcast world, like and making people laugh is such an important thing to me.
Yeah. Do you remember what the impetus was for you to get into acting?
I was so young, dude. It just started. You know, it was just like I was just there, and then it was just like, and then it kind of kept going. I don't even remember doing my first gig.
Really?
There's parts of Good Luck Charlie that are blurry to me.
No way.
You know, it just was young. I was just like, I remember the cool moments and like the exciting stuff, and obviously the end of it. But man, the start of it. The only things that I remember, I feel like from when I was like a young kid acting, were like, this sounds weird, but like the embarrassing moments, you know,
Really?
like where I messed up, like the kind of like traumatizing moments as a kid where you're embarrassed a little bit. But those are like the only things I remember doing this Sony commercial when I was like 7 years old, and I just couldn't get what the director was going for.
Yeah.
And I remember he was getting pretty heated, and that was just like, that was a lot to deal with as like a 7-year-old, you know, like I had no idea what was going on. But even on the first job I did, I didn't grasp the idea that I had a character name. So they were like, you know, the mom would come out in the scene and be like, you know, Timmy, it's time for breakfast. And I was like, who's that? You know?
It's Timmy, yeah.
They're like, you. And I'm like, no, my name's Bradley. Thank you. I think I know my name. And so they ended up changing the character name to Bradley just to make the commercial work so we could get out
Wow.
of it. Yeah.
Wow, no way.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It's the terrible acting, really, if you think about it. It's horrible.
You said it, not me. So on the set of Good Luck Charlie, what was your most defining moment?
Oh, man. Like one that stands out to me in particular. Wow. I don't know. I mean, I think that the ending of that show was so bizarre for me because, you know, Eric and Lee and even Jason, they had been a part of series before that, and they had gone through the end of a show before. But it's a weird thing when you end a show because you're so close with these people for so many years. And then it's just like one Friday, you're like, all right, see you. And we're never going to work again. You know,
Crazy.
it's like, it's weird. It's weird. We did 100 episodes in a movie together. We spent 5 years together.
Wow.
So it's like to just 1 week, just be like, you know, you start to count down, oh, well, this is our last, you know, table read. This is our last rehearsal day. This is our last day of this. And it's like, so you start going through those moments, and it makes it pretty sad. There was like one thing that really stood out to me that used to always make me so emotional was after our first episode, we were doing our second table read, and our creator, one of the creators, Phil Baker, stood up and goes, all right, well, 1 down, 99 to go. Like made the joke.
Yeah.
And then, at our final table read, ironically enough, it was our 100th episode. That was the last one we did.
Full
And
circle.
he stood up and he was like, made the joke, but 99 down, now 1 to go.
Wow.
And it was like like everybody's just sobbing at this table read. Because it was like also too, how ironic do you end on 100 episodes? You know, like never happens.
Also, I think, you know, obviously the show is very family centric.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that led to the success was the fact that you guys were all so close behind the scenes too.
For sure. I think that set up something that I always want for the rest of my career is like to be on sets where you feel that close with people, because it makes the work so much easier. And that's kind of the same thing I'm saying about Sandler, is like that idea that he creates a home for everybody. So people are excited to be there. And when you're excited to be, I mean, I worked on a show where they were miserable to be there, and it showed. I mean, like the show it doesn't work when people are like not happy with the cast. They're not happy with like everybody has a bad attitude. You're supposed to be there for 17 hours a day. It's like, it's a long time to be miserable with people. And you can see it when you watch the show too. And I think that on Good Luck Charlie, especially, like to have that family dynamic sold everything so much more.
What did you learn about yourself while being on the show? But then also, what is something that you learned about yourself while in college?
I learned a lot of things about myself in college. On the show, I don't know. I mean, I think from every TV show I did, I just kind of took away the idea that I loved working on sitcom. And I think I learned how much that means to me. Because it's the best job in the world. Even having gone and done movies, there's nothing like a TV show, because you're in the same place every day. You're working with the same people. You get a chance to kind of grow as a cast, like we're saying. And so I think that I certainly realized that was like the thing I wanted to do for my life. As far as college goes, you know, I look at a lot of people in the industry that I grew up with who I feel like didn't really have a real experience like going to college, and didn't really have that, I don't know, they just kind of kept chasing this dream, which is great. And I think they're all really talented and amazing people. But I value those stupid trips that I took with my college buddies, you know, to Austin, Texas, and I slept on a couch for 3 days, and you know, it was just a rowdy group of people where I felt like a normal person. Like that's some of the most valuable moments of my life. And just like my best friend in college was in the Navy, you know, so we were so far apart from like like we'll still go out. He's even away right now on a ship, and I'll randomly get a text from him like of where he is or whatever. And every time we see each other, he's like, it is so bizarre how different our lives are. Like, I'm like, I got to go do a podcast tomorrow. He's like, yeah, I got to go clean a ship. You know, I'm like, it's just totally different lives, you know?
Wow.
So that was a cool part for me of like having just a totally different group of people, you know?
Yeah. I mean, sitting where we are right now, we're both in our 20s.
Yeah.
We both started fairly young doing what we're doing. If you can go back and give 12-year-old Bradley some advice, what would you tell him?
Oh, I definitely wish I would have asked more questions and really tried to build up more relationships with the people that I worked with. You know, just I got to work with some unbelievable people, and I think if I could have sat down and talked to them a little more and just, you know, learned a little bit, but I didn't know. You couldn't know.
Yeah, too young.
Way too young. And I got to do when I did a Sandler movie, in between scenes, I sat down and talked to Ben Stiller. His daughter was in the film, who I still talk to every once in a while. And you know, we were sitting down. He was just watching her work. He was just there like as her parent for the day, which was so bizarre. You know, like that was so cool. He was just her legal guardian for the day, like just so cool. Standing in craft service. And you know, so he and I ended up having a conversation for like an hour, and we just kind of talked mostly about my life, and he was asking me questions, and I'm like, wow, I wish I could go back and ask him things, you know,
that's wild.
And talk to him about stuff. Cause I guess he and the whole family was big fans of Good Luck Charlie. So we talked about that a lot. And yeah.
How crazy is that actually for people that you would watch?
Yeah.
to come up to you and be like, oh, I love that show that you were on?
No, man, the like craziest one for me was, I grew up in LA. My dad's a Laker season ticket holder, and yeah, grew up going to Laker games. Like we went to 20 games a year. And so I was just a diehard Kobe Bryant fan. Just like, that was like the most important person in my life. And we were filming one day and they were like, hey, Kobe's on the stage next door, but he loves your guys' show and would love to meet you guys.
That gave me chills.
Yeah. And so we go over there and he stands up, introduces himself and was like, your Christmas movie was hilarious. Like, you're so funny. It's like said, I'm so funny. And I started crying. I was just like, dude, I was like, this is like the greatest. I was like, you don't understand like what this means to me. Cause he was bigger than life to me, like, literally, but also like, just, he meant so much to me. And like on just watching him play and his work ethic and everything. So to hear that from him was like, that was the craziest moment of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if I may ask you, what else was that moment like, meeting Kobe?
Dude, I think that a lot of it for me was like, he's like my childhood. When I like think about my dad, I think about like,
Kobe.
Like we were such big Laker fans and we grew up watching Kobe and Shaq, like I had their jerseys when I was 3 years old, and so I just was such a big fan of them and watching every Laker game. And I think when he died, that was like so hard because especially like living in LA, I feel like if you didn't live in LA, you don't even understand like what this city like was just shut down.
I'll never forget that day.
2 days. It was weird.
I'll never forget that.
I know.
Like it happened like really early
like
too.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bizarre day.
It was like Grammy Day too.
Yeah, it was.
And like the Grammys was the vibe was crazy.
I know, dude. I was at USC at the time, and I was at my parents' house that morning, and I drove from Thousand Oaks to USC.
Oh wow!
And so I was going through Calabasas.
Wow!
And I must have just driven right by it like at that same time because I went that morning. Then I got a text from my friend later, like, "Oh my God, I hope this isn't true." And it was just like the saddest thing. But not to like really bring this down, but that same day I had a buddy of mine pass away at a different college that I was in. And because everything was going on with Kobe, I didn't even know until like 2 days later.
Wow.
And that's
sorry for your loss.
No, it's all good now. But it was a bizarre like week,
No, and it's crazy to even kind of like take yourself back to that moment. Cause like literally I'll never forget where I was. Like I remember.
I know. It was, I don't know if there's like, as far as Los Angeles goes, I don't know if anybody else like,
I don't think
would
so.
have that impact.
I really don't think so.
No.
Like that day was actually crazy.
Yeah, it was so sad. And it rained that day too.
It rained.
I remember that it rained that day because I was even more
It happened
depressing.
so early. Because like, I mean, not to touch on this too much, but like I remember like at the beginning, they just said he was like missing.
Yeah, I know. They didn't know if he was on the
and then as the morning progressed, you just kind of like started hearing the horrible news, and it's heartbreaking.
I know, so crazy.
Yeah.
We were shooting a short film that day. You know what's even weirder was I was so sick at that time, like the sickest I have ever been in my life. And I was at school, and 2 weeks later, I think we shut down for COVID.
Great.
And
that's
like,
another thing that's insane.
Yeah, but like nobody knew that. Like I think that I genuinely like think I had COVID, but nobody. We weren't testing for it at the time, because I have never been that sick.
What a crazy time to look back on. Did you?
Yeah,
did you have like a normal graduation?
Not normal. I graduated the following year, so things were a little more put back. My whole senior year was online, which was a bummer.
Wow.
But the graduation was in person. It just was a little more. COVID.
Wow. Hey, that's tough. We touched on some heavy stuff.
Thank God COVID, like that era is gone, dude. That was the worst.
What a horrible time.
It's like, it doesn't even feel like that ever happened. It was like fake years.
I think I just kind of blocked that out in my mind. Like I don't even like to think about that time.
Yeah. Like remember you had to like get out of the car. You had to put your mask on just to go anywhere.
To go get COVID tested.
To do anything.
Yeah. Like you had to carry a card around with you, which is
I just deleted my, I was going to get on a plane the other day, and every time I do like the mobile thing, the vaccine card is the first thing that pops up. I just deleted that the other day because I was like, I don't
Wild.
think I need
Hey, we've
this
evolved.
anymore. Yeah, I know we're good.
Do you ever take a moment to like look back at your whole career and everything that you've experienced, everything you've been through? Is there one particular moment that kind of like, even to this day, like, no way I did that?
I think definitely working with Sandler. That's like the coolest thing for me. That was like that was a moment that I could never possibly forget. And just my favorite city in the world is Boston, and we shot in Boston. And you know, I was there with a bunch of friends, and I was there for 2 weeks, I think, and I think I worked 3 days.
Wow.
So I just got to just putz around Boston. I was going to Red Sox games by myself.
That's so
It was
cool.
awesome. I was so happy.
cool.
Which, by the way, is the best way to go to a baseball game. If you're a baseball fan, is alone, so you don't have to talk to anybody. You just watch the game. It's great.
Pretty good.
Yeah, dude. I just sat there, had a hot dog, had a beer, and walked back to my hotel. I was so happy. I'm so happy.
That's the life.
But that might have been the best part of filming that movie.
Wow. Speaking about Sandler,
Yeah.
is there something about Sandler that like, okay, obviously you work with him, you get to know him a little bit more, but is there something that the public, like, is there something about him that surprised you?
We shot a scene. The bit was that we had like a Halloween party, and it was in a barn in Salem, Massachusetts. And there was probably 250 extras,
Okay.
which is an obscene amount. More than there ever should be, because that's a lot of people.
That's a lot
to
of
deal
people.
with. But it was a packed barn. And they were all like local Boston kids, which was really cool. They just were like, they put out a thing like, you want to be in a Sandler movie? And all these kids were like, yeah. So when we were all walking in, every time they would see a new person, they'd be like, oh my God, like they didn't know who was in the movie,
Yeah.
which was cool to see. But then after like 2 really long days of filming, he got on a microphone and like personally thanked like every extra that was there, just being like, you guys have been so great working here and made our life so much easier. And that never happens, you know, especially for, he wasn't directing, he obviously in it and producing it, but like just for him to get on the mic and do that, like just was the classiest move that I just remember thinking. Like, I remember standing there thinking, this is so special. 'Cause
Yeah.
background actors usually get treated so horribly. You know, they're there the longest and they're always in like a terrible little holding area. And so he was just talking to people and chatting it up. Anytime somebody would talk to him, he's just the sweetest dude. Yeah.
That's awesome because you really don't see that often.
No, never.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think I want to kind of tell a personal story if I may.
Okay.
So as a kid,
Yeah.
you and I, again, believe it or not, but you and I looked very similar as kids.
I could believe it. Yeah.
So I'll never forget this one time I was at the mall with my mom and this little girl came up to me thinking I was you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's,
And
did
I
you
was
take
literally-
the photo?
I took the photo.
Did you really?
I did.
You're kidding me.
But like,
You said yes.
I did. Not only that though.
That's unreal.
I also signed a little autograph.
Did you really?
I felt so bad. Let me just tell you why. Her mom and her like ran up on us at the mall. And like I
mall?
knew it was the Sherman Oaks Mall, the Westfield.
Yeah, I know.
And like I knew by this girl's like look on her face, like I knew she literally thought I was you. And if I told her it wasn't
you couldn't
you,
break her heart.
I literally would have broken her heart. So
That
like
is
I
awesome.
took the picture, I signed the autograph. And like it was funny because I called my mom and I was like laughing about that today. I was like, oh, you know who I'm like interviewed today?
That is hilarious.
Yeah, and she remembers that because even it got to the point where like they like I think tagged you on Instagram maybe. Like
oh my God.
it went.
And I probably saw it and I was
You probably
like,
did,
who
and
the
I
hell is
was
this
probably
guy?
like, oh my gosh, like,
What's this guy doing?
yeah, no, but that is something that I think about all the time. And whenever I'm at that mall specifically, I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember the store it was at, and she like ran up like crazily.
Oh my God, I wonder if she's watching this. She's going to be so depressed.
Look at this right here.
Could you imagine how depressed she would be if she just now found out?
Well, sorry to break your heart.
You know what I always get is people will come up to me and be like, are you Bradley Cooper? And I'm like, no, no, I'm not. I wish. And then they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm positive I'm not Bradley
No.
Cooper. Yeah. And then
Okay,
they're
Bradley
like,
Cooper.
I thought you looked familiar. And I'm like, not Bradley Cooper.
I'm gonna save you.
I'm
on
not
my
going to
phone
be
as Bradley
like, yeah,
Cooper.
this is who I am.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Wow.
I know.
Have there been any like crazy fan experiences that you think about? Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Did your fame ever get to the point where it was like hard to go out in public?
I mean, there were certainly times that like, you know, I think the tougher times are when you're just like going to the grocery store and you're in a terrible mood, which like sometimes like, you know, sometimes you're just in a bad mood and you look like shit and you're like, I don't really want to talk to anyone.
And those are the days somebody goes up to you.
Yeah, and that's the day you really got to be nice because I've never said no to taking a photo because it's so easy for a person to be like, that guy was such an asshole, you know? And then it just becomes a rumor. So it's like, I think my humor enough already makes people think I'm an asshole. So I'm like, I don't need any more reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
You know, so I always try to be nice because I also think about the time that I met Kobe and Kobe was so nice to me. And it's like, I remember that. So I hope that if somebody ever meets me, that's what they would remember too. And I could be very far off about that, but
I don't think so. I think
the hope.
No, I think you're pretty cool.
I hope. I don't know. But I will say there was one time when Jason and I were at Disney World and there was a Brazilian tour group there. And,
was this Florida?
Yeah. There was, I guess our show was really big in South America. And there was a line of probably 300 people that were like behind us. And it was all part of the same group.
Oh, dang.
And they had to shut down the ride because it got so out of hand, which was crazy. And we got on the ride, but people were trying to get on the ride with us. And then they had to shut down the ride because the line got so messed up. And that I've never seen happen before. And I don't think it would happen again, probably.
If I may ask you about this, just because, I mean, again, we are around the same age, so I'm sure we're probably experiencing a lot of the same things, but the dating game.
Yeah.
I mean, just because of, I think, who you are, is it kind of hard for you to date sometimes just because you don't know what the intentions might be?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's always like a weird thought in your brain. I kind of had to come to the realization of like, you know, most kids watched that show, like young kids. So the odds are pretty good that somebody that I'm going to date watches it, regardless of if they're an actress or if they're just, you know, a regular person. So I think that like, it's all in how a person approaches it. You know, if somebody's weird about it, then it's weird.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't know. I've gone back and forth about it because I've dated people in the industry. I've dated people who are not in the industry. And I don't really know which one's better because sometimes it's really nice to like not have to talk about the film industry. But then sometimes you're like, oh, you don't get it. You're like, you don't get how strange this business is. It's also a really weird thing to have to tell your significant other, oh, I'm going to do this movie and I have to make out with a girl in it, you know? And if they're not in the film industry, that's a really weird conversation to have, you know? It's like if my girlfriend went to work and at her desk job, she was like, yeah, I had to make out with Bill today. Be like, well, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know? Like just because it's the film industry, they got to be okay with it. So it is a weird world for sure.
That's very interesting because I'm obviously not you, but like I also sometimes I'm like, I have to be very guarded as to like who you let in.
Yeah. And I mean, everything's very out there. And I think when you have a podcast, you know, you kind of have to be open and honest. And, you know, Jake and I have talked about our personal lives and dating lives. And it's unfortunate, but that's usually what does well, you know, is when you have those conversations. So you're like, all right, well, I guess people enjoy hearing this. And then everything's super open, you know, and you kind of got to be vague about little details of the person and like what happened. Yeah. But just enough to keep people interested.
And to transition to the podcast, what do you think has been the greatest thing about the podcast in your opinion?
I think we've really enjoyed interviewing our friends and interviewing people who had very similar experiences as us. I think people getting to know us as adults rather than kids has been very valuable. Yeah. And I think For us, we had a podcast and then we had some difficulties production wise with it. And so we had to start a new one. And the reason we really wanted to start a new one was because people enjoyed it. So it wasn't really for us. It's not like, it's certainly not a financial thing. Because if it was, we were not doing too hot. But no, it's like you do it because people are watching it. And that's like such a cool idea. And that's what he and I were talking about, is like this idea that like, you can sell out Staples Center or something like that with the amount of people. It's like, it's a lot of people to let down if you stop doing it.
Yeah.
And we get sent comments every Monday that this is like the best part of somebody's week. And like, that's a pretty cool thing to hear,
Yeah. And I mean, obviously you're very passionate about the things that you attach your name to.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. It's going to be hard. What are you more passionate about right now? The podcast or cooking?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I cook. The only reason I'm like really into cooking, to be honest with you, was like the story behind that was like, I just enjoy eating super clean and healthy. And I just started getting really bored of eating chicken and rice every day, like the average person who eats clean does. So I just tried to like figure out how to make the food more interesting. And then so I started cooking weird things. And then I was doing that with Eric and we were like, hey, we should film this sometime. And so that's how that came to be. But the podcast for me is like, that's such a like cathartic release of creativity that I can just go in there and like throughout the day when something happens, I'll write down a bit or something like that I want to go do on the podcast or something that stupid that happens in my life that I'm like, I got to go talk about this.
Yeah.
I'll be standing in an airport and somebody will piss me off and I'll be like, I want to go talk about that on a podcast. So I try to do that all the time because it's like, that's my way of like getting it out. Because most people hear things I say and they're like, who cares? But I'm like, I can at least say it to Jake and maybe somebody will care.
Yeah. No. And let me just tell you, since I have you here, but like genuinely, I told you this from the beginning. The podcast is incredible. And I think it's so refreshing just to see you both like in the stages of life that you guys are in. And like, for one, like, again, I watched you guys grow up.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool to see you guys still be friends and just shoot the shit. Like, it's cool.
It's fun for us. And I think he and I are very similar in the sense of like what I'm saying about needing that creative release. So I think that we both go into it with this idea. I think where we struggle is sometimes we feel as if we're like, if you don't know, like I said, if you don't know people are laughing, you're like, are we trying too hard to be funny? Are we sitting here like trying to be funny? But it's like, dude, our goal is that we're just recording our conversations. So it's been fun. It's been fun to see, and people have been really nice about it, which is cool. But we also listen to the comments, which is always a bad thing too, because we'll read it and everybody's got a different opinion on things. Like on, you should start the episode like this, or you should end it like this and do this. And you're like, I don't know what to do. I just want you guys to like the podcast. I hope you enjoy it, No,
you know what? On that though, when you are receiving a lot of comments from people, obviously, again, everybody has an opinion and that's fine.
Yeah.
But are you at this place in your life where you just kind of like shut it out most of the time? Or are you kind of like, okay, you do listen to it, well, you take what you have to? And
we've found that the people who listen to our podcast are the most loyal fan base we have. And like the fact that they're there, I'm like, dude, I'm going to listen to them till the day I die. Cause they clearly, they're not just some random troll on the internet, like, fuck you guys. You know? It's like, they're being nice and they're, and if any comment, that's why we've listened to it, is cause like a lot of people are like, I love you guys, but you guys do this. And we're like, okay, well, yeah, let's not do that, you know? Or like, I love listening to this podcast, but it'd be so much better if you guys did this. And we're like, okay, let's try it, you know? Cause they're the ones watching it, you know? Right. So it's like, if they want that, then let's try it out. And most everybody is so unbelievably sweet. And the coolest part, I would say, is that Jake and I, like I said, we can be pretty vulgar and make pretty stupid jokes. You know, knock on wood, haven't gotten in trouble once for it, which is shocking. Pretty happy with that.
No, I think, again, it's super cool to see that side of you guys.
Yeah.
Because again, like you grew up on Disney Channel, obviously you're not able to like cuss and like, you know?
Yeah, but that's a funny thing though, is that people are like, sometimes we've gotten that it's like, it's only when I post a clip on Instagram where I get like a random Instagram troll that's like, you know, oh, he just wants to separate himself from Disney by swearing. And I'm like, dude, it's not that deep. I'm just speaking, you know, like this is just how I talk to my friends. I'm like, not trying to make some big move.
Yeah.
I'm just talking, you know, like me and my buddy are joking around. It's not that big a deal. So,
yeah. All right. So let's wrap this up.
okay.
But obviously there's going to be somebody that is sitting here watching this saying, okay, I want to do what Bradley does. I want to be an actor. You know, what advice do you give them on that pursuit to making that a reality?
On the acting front, man, you really have to love acting because it's a brutal job as far as like, actually the job is great. It's the process of getting the job that's like the miserable experience, the auditioning, the going in there and performing in front of somebody and them not giving a shit. Those days are kind of behind now with everybody doing self-tapes. I'm kind of envious of kids who are growing up doing that because like there's something though that molds you when your whole life is going and performing in front of people and them being like, ugh, you know, and you have to walk out and deal with that.
Yeah.
Like Jake and I were saying, we've bombed so many auditions where you just walk in and you're just like, oh my God, that was so bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, I only get to do this. That was the one time I get to do that. And you rehearsed it all week and you're like, I know it was good. I just fucked it up, you know? And then, you got to move on to the next one. Or you're like, that was one of the best performances I've ever given. And they're like, well, we were looking for somebody who's blonde. And you're like, okay, cool. This is fun, you know? I think I struggle with the idea of encouraging, you know, like I would struggle with the idea of encouraging my kids to act because I know how tough that is. But I've always thought that like if you love it, it's the thing that you want to do. You obviously should do it, you know? And then I think in any other aspect of like entertainment or comedy or podcasting, like you got to find the thing that's like different. It's kind of like you and I were saying is like, you know, what can Jake and I bring to the experience that a lot of people can't? And that was the idea of talking about working as a child. You know, that's something that's very unique to us. That if somebody listens to it, they're like, oh, well, technically speaking, they might be experts in that idea. You know, if it was just like, hey, we want to sit down and we're going to just talk Jake and I, it's like people will eventually go, well, you're not very interesting. So, but like if we had like a niche, I guess, and, you know, I think that if you come at it from the aspect though of just wanting to entertain people, then you're in the right place. If it's ever the aspect of money, it's definitely the wrong intention.
What advice do you have for kids that are wanting to do this or wanting to pursue their dreams, but you know, being a kid, you have big dreams, the kids are bullying you and they say, oh, you can't do that. What do you tell them when they're faced with rejection and when they're faced with these people that tell them you can't do this? Yeah,
I don't know why. When I was playing baseball as a kid and I was acting, I would always get like, the people would always make fun of me for acting or joking around, which I don't think I understand. And I still to this day don't really understand, you know, because it's like, it's such a cool gig. And you watch people like, even like, okay, so you watch that roast, right? The difference between those comedians who went up there and the athletes that went up there, who are like so nervous on stage telling these jokes and like so uncomfortable and they don't really know how to do the punchline or the timing of all of it. And then you watch those comedians come up there and they're like, oh my God, they just demolished. Like everything was perfect. The timing was perfect. Like the bits are perfect. You realize like how much harder it is to do what they do.
Right.
You know? And so I think that's why a lot of athletes like try to get into acting because they think that it's like an easy transition.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And then every athlete usually looks like shit when they get on screen because they don't know what to do, you know? And I think that like, dude, if you're good at something, what does it matter? I don't even know why. I wouldn't even think to like make fun of that idea, you know? Because it's such a hard thing to do. And it's such a vulnerable thing to do.
Right.
Way more vulnerable than sports. You kidding me? Like you're putting your like, that's your performance. But at least like if you're on a team, you're a team, you know?
Yeah, I was bullied for interviewing.
Yeah, it's so stupid,
which is crazy.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like, dude, you're sitting down, you're trying to talk to people. And also like the audacity of getting mad at somebody for just wanting to entertain. Like what a weird thing.
It impacted me drastically though.
Really?
Yeah, like it got super bad.
How so?
Like I'll never forget 5th grade. I started interviewing in the 5th grade. I was 10, and my classmates found the YouTube channel. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But they found the YouTube channel. They created a YouTube channel called Andro Sucks.
Huh.
And they were commenting on
Clever.
every video.
Yeah.
And like they were reposting these videos, and it was just like it made it just hard to go to school.
It's just jealousy though.
Yeah. No, I realized that later on, but like at the time it was horrible.
I remember I was playing baseball and I think I was on a show at the time. And somebody was making fun of me for being on a TV show. And I think like I literally was just like, what's the joke?
Yeah.
What's like, oh my God, I'm working on television.
Yeah.
You got me.
Definitely insecurity.
Yeah, that hurt my feelings.
There you
You know,
go.
it's like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? Like, what are you joking about? Like, that's such a strange. And also, like, it's not like I got gifted something. I'm working my ass off to do this thing. You're working your ass off to interview people. It's like, that's your thing. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you're just trying to make a living. You're trying to live your life and do the thing you want to do. I think that people just like, yeah, they get jealous or they like, I see it all the time. Jake and I make stupid jokes and we'll post them on Instagram, and then people will be like, that's not funny, or, you know, you're just spoiled and stuff.
Yeah.
I posted this clip it's from our show, and I was just, if the people would have watched the whole interview, they would have understood what I was talking about.
Context.
I was talking about how when I'm at airports, I think that's like the worst version of people. It's
Yeah.
like seriously the most
Yeah.
disgusting version of people. Everybody's at their worst. And it's not their fault. They're tired and everything's gross and shitty.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the people just like are in a hurry to get somewhere. They're cutting you off. They're coughing on you. And it's just gross. Like everybody's really gross at airports. And I said, I think my problem in general is that I just don't like people. Like I don't like people, you know, and that was my problem. And Jake was like, a lot of people say on the internet, you're like a grandpa. And I was like, yeah, I actually really appreciate that because I understand what that means, you know? I don't know how I got put into like this weird Instagram algorithm of people who have no idea who I am.
Oh Lord.
And they start just commenting on it like, this fucking asshole, like this pretentious asshole who like doesn't like people, classic celebrity not liking people, or like who even gave this guy a podcast. And I'm like, oh my God. Like,
It's not that
you didn't
deep.
even know. Yeah, you didn't even know what I was talking about. You didn't even go look at the interview where we're clearly joking too.
Yeah.
I don't hate people to a degree. I don't enjoy people all the time, but like, you know, I don't hate people. So it was just like, why are you so mad, dude?
Watch the full video.
Yeah, I was like, at least give me the view. I would.
There you go,
appreciate
right?
that. Yeah.
Well, Bradley, if we could sit here, keep talking for like
Yeah.
another 3 hours, but genuinely, I'm so thankful for your time.
Thank you, man. This was a lot of fun.
No, genuinely, thank you for being here. And I truly believe that this conversation will help somebody. So thank
Cool,
you.
dude. I'm always happy to hear that.
Bradley, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. Twitter's still a thing. Do people go on
It's
Twitter?
called like X.
No, it is called X, right?
X.
My Instagram is Bradley_S_Perry12. We have a YouTube channel, Bradley Perry. It's online. And then the podcast, The Sit and Chat, where Jake and we sit and chat.
And it is great.
Not a very clever name for a podcast, but it is our name.
I like it. I think it's authentic.
Not the biggest fan, but it works.
Well, evolution. We can evolve.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Andro Mamo. Thank you for listening and watching another episode of One on One. Bet on you. And I'll see you guys soon.